Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Allie and welcome to the top comment where I read and react to insane internet chaos in the form of Reddit stories. So if you like this type of content, please don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and it means a lot to me. On Tuesday's episode, we talked about bridezillas, aka brides who absolutely lose their marbles during the wedding process. Today we are going to be talking all about weddings that have gone terribly, terribly wrong. So let's get into it. Alright, story number 1. This one comes from r-ask Reddit, and it says, what is the worst thing you've seen happen at a wedding? The top comment says, bride was dancing during the reception, fell and broke her left arm. Lots of pictures from the ER as the photographer went with them. When the doctor heard he'd be setting a bride's arm, he put on a suit. They worked hard to get the swelling down so she wouldn't have to have her brand new wedding ring cut off. Crazy. Edit. I was in the wedding party. I was 10 years old. This was a long time ago. The bride was my aunt. The fall happened after dinner. Before they left for the hospital, the cake was quickly brought out for the bride and the groom to cut. Everyone went on partying after they left. I haven't seen the pictures since she got them back from the photographer. I remember the picture of her and the doctor in the suit, my uncles in their tuxes doing wheelies in wheelchairs, and her red-rimmed eyes while cutting the cake. Wow, that's crazy. I can't imagine breaking my arm on my wedding day. That's some bad luck for ya. The next comment says, 12 speeches, 2 musical numbers, and 1 PowerPoint presentation. Ooh, you lost me at PowerPoint presentation. It's giving college course. The next comment says, matron of honor throwing up just as the officiant was asking if anyone objected. Man, straight out of a cartoon with that one. That's insane. The next comment says, best man starts off his speech with, I've seen the groom with lots of girls over the years. You know, the cliche speech where it goes on to say, but you're the best for him, etc., etc. Turns out the bride and groom were dating long before the best man even became a friend. Essentially, he outed him as a degenerate cheater. She was super pissed. Call it all off at that point. That is not worth getting back into. I mean, maybe he did it on purpose to try and save her, but why wait until the wedding day? That's super lame. The next comment says, this happened at my own wedding. My mother-in-law is an alcoholic and we asked her not to drink. My father-in-law, her ex-husband, was with his new wife. Long story short, when we were wrapping up reception, she got so drunk that she tried to hit him with a bottle of champagne and missed and swung around and knocked herself the fuck out. Edit. I forgot to add the aftermath. We were asked to leave immediately and had to do something with her. We were so mad that we decided to drop her off at the police station and they took her to detox for the night. Edit number 2. This is the tamest story I have about my good old mother-in-law. Imagine that. Listen, if she's gonna ruin everything like that and you know this about her, don't invite her places. Why are you making it worse on yourself? You're not in the wrong to just say, you know what, you need to sit this one out until you get your life together. Actions have consequences. That's all I'm saying. The next comment says, the bride's grandmother keeled over and died during the reception. I can't think of anything worse than that. That would be absolutely terrible on so many levels. The last comment says, a giant brush-tail possum fell through the ceiling at my cousin's wedding. The bartenders managed to chase it with a broom into the supply closet behind the bar before calling security, who then called a pest removalist. Again, straight out of a cartoon. I bet this is where they get some of their ideas from. Imagine a giant possum just falling from the ceiling onto you in your wedding reception. I wouldn't necessarily say that would ruin it, but it would definitely put an interesting twist to it for sure. All right, we're gonna move on to the next story. This one also comes from Ask Reddit, and it says, Redditors who have left your fiancé at the altar. Why did you do it and what happened? The top comment says, a guy I knew did this. He was a nice, laid-back guy marrying a very toxic person. I can't get into the details because I didn't know him too well, but apparently his friends had been telling him to break it off from the very beginning. They had a final intervention for him the moment of the wedding, and they finally convinced him to just leave. He showed up at this festival I was at during what was supposed to be his wedding. I saw him and said, "Hey man, aren't you getting married today?" He kind of had this faraway look and said, "Yeah, that's not happening anymore." Oh, yikes. So he just didn't show up. I still feel like you should have the common decency to, at bare minimum, if you want to be a bottom of the barrel human, that's fine. At least send a text and say, "I can't do this." I mean, even that is still, like I said, bottom of the barrel human, but it's better than just not showing up. That is humiliating. I can't even imagine. I would be mortified. I think I would probably leave the country at that rate. I think I would take my dogs and put them on a boat and we would all just sail away to Japan together or something, because there's no way. I mean, that's one of the worst things that you can do to somebody is ghost them on your wedding day. That's horrible. The next comment says, "My mom thought that she had been left at the altar by not only my dad, but the minister as well. She hated being the center of attention and didn't look up from the ground until she was almost down the aisle. Just then, the door behind the altar flew open and my dad ran out with his kilt flapping around him, followed by the minister. Apparently, they had been drinking whiskey in the minister's office and hadn't realized the ceremony had started." The kilt flapping in the wind is what got me. That's a great visual. The next comment says, "I got left at the altar. He had spent the previous day spending a lot of time with his ex instead of helping me set up. I yelled at him about it because he was late and he hadn't helped us at all. He said he didn't want to get married because spending time with his ex made him realize I wasn't as fun as she was because I was uncomfortable with him doing kicked him out and still had the party. I told him to use that time to go home and pack up all his shit. He did. Then he got into another shit. So yay." Wow, it really sounds like you dodged a bullet and it sounds like he just drove his life straight into the ground. I'm really glad that you didn't end up going through with it because of this. Imagine spending the entire day you're supposed to get married with your ex. That is trashy on a whole new level. That's so cringe. I hate that for anybody who's ever experienced that. The next comment says, "Not at the altar, but I bailed just 2 days before we were headed to City Hall. It was a green card marriage. On our second date, she mentioned that her visa was expiring in 6 months and I jokingly proposed to her. We continued dating, were falling for each other, and that proposal became much more real as the deadline approached. I backed out just at the last minute because we just didn't agree on a few details. Living arrangements and finances were easy. What couldn't be negotiated on was how seriously either of us wanted to take these vows. I wanted to at least attempt to be a married monogamous couple. She didn't really want to commit to that. If she falls deeper in love, great. If not, we're just roommates. I miss her, but I think I dodged a bullet. I believe she would have vanished on me at some point, and I could be in a real jam over an immigration crime. You sure did dodge a bullet, and you also made the right choice by backing out. Her immigration is not your problem. Obviously, if you're in love with someone and you do all of that for the right reasons, that's fine, but I feel like she mentioned it on that second date to you just so that, you know, she could try to get in this situation, and she probably would have bailed. She probably would have bailed at some point, and you're right, you could have gotten into a lot of trouble, so good for you. The next comment says, "Wasn't me personally, but if anyone here has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace." Woman in the back stands up and says, "The groom can't get married because he is my husband." Turns out the woman who objected and the groom were in fact married and tried to get divorced, but the divorce was never completed. So technically the groom was still married and the wedding did not proceed. If you tried to get divorced and it didn't go through, did he know that it didn't go through? Why is she being so petty over it by sitting in the back and waiting until the last call of if you have any objections? I feel like that's a ridiculous level of petty. But maybe he didn't know that the divorce didn't go through and he had her blocked and couldn't get a hold of her. I mean, I don't know. People come up with excuses for all kinds of things these days, so it's really all beyond me. The last comment says, "I left my ex-fiance a month before the wedding. Backstory, I never actually proposed to her. She more or less did it to me. We were in a mall and she wanted to go to a jewelry store to look at engagement rings. I wasn't expecting to walk out of there with one, but we did. The salesperson even took a just engaged Polaroid. She became more and more controlling and I couldn't take it anymore. After I left her, her friend texted me on the day of the supposed ceremony telling me the cake was delicious. My ex somehow managed to break into my email and ask me who a girl was in an email I received after I left her. I could never understand her reasoning if it was before, but it wasn't. She also texted me a while after I left and told me she missed her period. An hour later, I got another text that said, never mind. I'm pretty sure I dodged a bullet by leaving. I can confidently say you definitely did. If she coerced you into going into the store to look at engagement rings and y'all had never had that conversation before, that's pretty crazy, scary, stage 5 clinger status. So good thing you got out of that. If you had talked about it ahead of time and you wanted to go in and just check stuff out so she could show you her favorites, then that's fine. But being coerced into buying something right then and there, super, super awkward. All right, our next story comes from r-wedding shaming, and it says, shame bad weddings, not those that are low income. I've noticed a worrying trend on here of wedding shaming that basically amounts to, oh, they didn't buy enough decorations, or oh, they weren't wearing the dress that perfectly matched their color scheme, or oh, the couple dared to use a backyard rather than a huge venue. Cheap is a different manner entirely, but not everyone is within their means to have a huge wedding. They make do with what they have. They still want to have a party. Can only those who are well off have weddings? If the bride and groom are happy and the guests are treated well, and its only sin is being simple, maybe we should shame you, the guest, who's turning their nose up because it doesn't fit their idea of a perfect wedding. For example, a themed wedding may not be everyone's taste. Expensive weddings can be themed, but most of them have low budgets. If you hate it, don't do it when you get married. But making rude comments throughout the event is awfully tacky. If the married couple isn't hurting anyone and it truly makes them happy, I don't know. I just think it's shameful. I think an expensive wedding where the married couple hates each other and makes a scene is far more shameful than a couple having a Halloween themed wedding. If it's not hurting anyone, don't complain. Mind your business. The top comment on this one says, I agree with this so much. People were shamed because the homemade dresses don't fit. They had to use an old boombox instead of a band. The venue was a restaurant or a backyard. I could go on and on. Best wedding I ever went to was in a backyard where it was a potluck and the bride's grandma made the dress. It looked like shit, not gonna lie. Poverty or simply not spending any money is not a reason to shame. Let's shame weddings where grooms make out with the maid of honor, the mother-in-law wears her old wedding dress, the minister has COVID, or they have a slavery theme at a plantation or something, not because it was low budget. Yeah, don't judge other people for that. That's not cool. As long as they're happy, it does not matter. They could get married and celebrate their love in the middle of the woods with just the two of them there, and I think that's beautiful. If that's what the couple wants, then we should be celebrating that, not being judgmental little you-know-whats over it. The next comment says, I bartended a $100,000 wedding and it was insanely bad. A groomsman broke a leg, police arrived, so much crying, so many people vomiting, ew, so many kids having to be watched by the bar staff because their parents were there, a DJ who only played hardcore rap with so many bad words in it, the grandma of the bride had a meltdown. Expensive does not equal good. You are entirely right. No, it does not. Chaos knows no monetary value. The next comment says, my niece got married in the conference room of a Best Western. I remember thinking that their wedding would have been a lot nicer in her parents' backyard. But the tackiness of that wedding was the fact that they had to find out the hard way that 15-year-olds can't get married even with parental permission in our state. So happily, they had to wait until the groom turned 16. That was very layered. I don't think I want to unpack all of that. The next comment says, I feel like shaming poor planning makes more sense than shaming money problems, but sometimes it is hard to tell the difference. My sister's wedding was a shit show because she gave everyone 2 weeks to plan it. It looked poor, but really it was trashy because she had zero patience and had very little help because we didn't really approve. Turns out we were correct, unfortunately. They didn't even make it a year when he went to prison for robbing my parents. I had a poor wedding, but I spent a year planning it. I pinched pennies everywhere I could, and yet I see people on here shaming some of the very things that were featured at my wedding. There's no pretending I'm upper class white trash, but I did the best I could with the resources I had. I had more of a fun family reunion feel or a fancy barbecue rather than a wedding, but everyone had fun and no one was in a hurry to leave. A large formal wedding just wouldn't have felt right for me, my husband, or either of our families. My neighbors lovingly informed me that they could hear the party half a mile away up until midnight, and everyone was smiling all day and all night, especially when the ice cream truck showed up unexpectedly just as the cupcakes ran out. That sounds like a lovely time. Sometimes less is more. You don't have to deal with all the chaos. You don't have to deal with all the bills. You don't have to deal with trying to people please everybody. I think that's really beautiful. The last comment says, the best wedding I ever attended was a Halloween themed wedding held outdoors at an old school. I will never shame a wedding where the father of the bride is dressed as a Playboy bunny. That sounds like such a great time with a really funny group of people. I don't think we should ever judge anybody based on their wedding choices unless there is complete and utter avoidable chaos. The last story from today, this one also comes from Ask Reddit, and it says, those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? The top comment says, a coworker was at one of my best friend's weddings. There were very specific rules about the food. No nuts. There were a couple of people there, including the maid of honor, who were severely allergic. The venue served something that had nuts in it. The maid of honor went anaphylactic shock. EpiPen was not effective. She died on the way to the hospital. Needless to say, lawsuits abound. That comment has 53,000 upvotes. That's insane. That's so sad and so scary. I don't know a whole lot about food allergies, but I do know enough to know that they are no joke. And if they explicitly said no nuts in the food, I hope that people were really held liable for this. That is incredibly sad. The next comment says, my nephew is highly allergic to peanuts and was the ring bearer in a wedding where he was very young. The bride and groom made sure that the venue, the caterers, and whoever made the cake all knew that there should be no peanut containing or contaminated food on the premise for their wedding. No one thought to tell the DJ though, and the DJ had brought peanuts as a snack. He held my nephew's hand walking him into the reception, and my nephew had a serious reaction. He was okay in the end. Fortunately, the EpiPen did work in his case, but it certainly put a damper on the reception after he had to leave for the hospital. It was pretty scary, and I share that story hoping that if any other brides and grooms have a loved one with a peanut allergy, make sure you tell every single person that might step foot into your wedding venue. Wow, another one about food allergies. That's crazy. What are the odds of the DJ bringing peanuts as a snack? I feel like that's pretty random, but yeah, it just goes to show you really need to alert every single person that is going to be going in and out of there, no matter how big or how small their job may be. The next comment says, we attended a wedding for a family member who didn't have a lot of money. It was hosted at an inexpensive venue, but it was nice. My heart broke when only a third of the people invited showed up. You could see the hurt in the couple's face. They came to our table and asked, do you have any friends in the city that lived an hour away? They had all this food for 100 people, but only 30 guests. They were willing to have complete strangers come down just so that their money and food wouldn't go to waste. We had not handed over our card with cash in the inside yet, so my husband hit the ATM and added another $100. This comment has 47,000 upvotes. That was a really nice gesture of you guys to do. That's so sad. You know that those 70 people RSVP'd and then just decided to bail at the last minute. I feel like that's a group effort attack. That's really mean. Just tell people that you're not going to be there if you're not going to be there. Don't plan on not showing up and then ruining the entire day. I mean, all that food just went to waste. That's horrible. The next comment says, somewhere there exists a picture of me in stage blacks in the middle of a drunken wedding reception conga line. My boyfriend at the time was doing sound for the band as they had intended to have live music. Something like 60% of the people showed up there. There was a snowstorm involved, and the bride, without missing a beat, invited all of the venues, including people who weren't even working at the wedding, to come eat and dance. Bride's mother ended up playing DJ for an hour with the exact same no-nonsense attitude as her daughter so the band could properly sit down for dinner, and the groom and his groomsmen, still in their tuxedos, insisted on helping load out even though it was basically just a drum kit and a couple of speakers. I have no idea who these people were, but I would bet money I can't afford to lose that they're still happily married. They do sound like a really chill couple. Take care of the people that take care of you. Be nice to wait staff. Be nice to the people that are helping make your special day special, because without them, it would not pop off like that. The next comment says, I'm a wedding photographer. I was at a really fancy wedding a couple of years ago, a typical outdoor deal at a swanky location in the middle of nowhere. The place was really nice and had a large concrete stairway flanked by water fountains that led down to the altar area, so the bride could be seen by all like she was ascending from heaven. The ceremony begins and the bridal party comes down and takes their places. Then the bride appears with her father. She takes 3 or 4 steps steps down the concrete steps and her shoe twists on her. She stumbled down a good 12 feet or more and busted out the majority of her front teeth in the fall. So much blood all over her. With the place being so isolated, it took a good 40 minutes for the ambulance to arrive, and she was in intense pain. Ultimately, she was okay, and I got an email from them weeks later with a rescheduled date. This time, there were no stairs anywhere in sight. Oh my God, especially for us girls who don't wear heels very often, walking in them on your wedding day is definitely intimidating. I don't even think with enough practice she could have been spared there. Oh my gosh, poor girl. That had to hurt so bad, losing all your teeth like that. I can't even imagine. But at least they were able to reschedule it. I think that was really nice, and the fact that they invited everybody else again, and I'm sure she just looked beautiful, and hopefully she was able to get a new set of teeth by then. The next comment says, this was one I worked at. After the ceremony, right at the start of the reception, photographer was taking jumping photos of the bride and the bridesmaids. So they were all jumping in the air while wearing heels. Bride landed and dislocated her knee, then passed out and kept going in and out of consciousness. We called an ambulance who turned up and fixed her knee, but she wanted to continue with the wedding. She then had the first course of the meal and threw up all over her dress and had to sit with her mom in another room while everyone else danced. Felt so bad for her as she spent the rest of the evening crying. I have seen those jumping pictures all over the internet. I don't think I will ever be participating in one. I would be that friend that would break my ankle. I would break my face. It would be an entire ordeal. If you're gonna do those jumping pictures, maybe you should consider taking your heels off. I think that's probably a better way to use our brains, but it's fine, I guess, you know. It's your wedding, do you, whatever makes you happy. Just don't go hurting other people in the process. The last comment says, the bride's father was 45 minutes late to walk his daughter down the aisle. While we were waiting, the air conditioning broke in the venue. It was over 100 degrees outside and humid as f***. The place was overcrowded. You could barely move without bumping into someone else, and in that heat, it was extra miserable. I guess the air conditioning problem had also affected the refrigeration or something because most of the food was spoiled. The only food on the buffet that was served was salad, spaghetti, and rolls, not enough to feed even half of the guests. Most people left after the first dance. Two of the bride's aunts fainted. The bride and the wedding planner both cried. I think I would probably cry too. That sounds like an absolute disaster. All of these sound absolutely horrible. I want to know in the comments, have you ever been to a bad wedding? Have you ever been to a good wedding? Let's do a little sprinkle of positivity in here today because I feel like this episode got a little bit soggy, but it's good to get perspective on all walks of life, especially the crazy ones. And the crazy ones just tend to be the most entertaining. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you on Sunday for the mashup episode. Bye.